swear these other podcasts are just a waste of time. I'm skipping through them, I'd rather listen and change my mind. Wes and Nick always help me through my daily grind. Your favorite guys, your favorite lines, change my mind. I swear these other podcasts are just a waste of time. I'm skipping through them, I'd rather listen and change my mind. Wes and Nick always help me through my daily grind. Your favorite guys, your favorite lines, change my mind.
Yeah. Call me basic, fellas, but fall is, without question, the best time of the year.
I think you're right.
Change my mind.
Okay. I will play devil's advocate here.
Yes. I threw you for a little bit of a curve there.
You did, yeah. I wasn't ready for that. I was just thinking you start with I don't know why I didn't think of that. Summer is better because for your job, it's a little bit more laid back. Now, sometimes it can be more stressful.
I agree.
But it's more laid back, and then you can go and try and dig in deeper on whether leagues you have going on, Cape League, whatever.
I don't like that we're talking, because I feel like I've said those exact words to you like earlier this year.
You never did. I just pay attention. You know I'm pretty good about that. Like the TV shows, right?
Okay, yeah.
So anyway,
pay attention, yeah.
But then you can just relax more. You can take time off. You can go out, enjoy the sun, all that crap. The autumn is nice. I would say it's a good number 2. I mean, I like winter. Christmas time is fun too, and
Christmas time there's a lot of
ice
fun.
skating and all this stuff.
But yeah, there's no better time to drink a cup of coffee, like hot or cold, than in the fall. It's
true.
Perfect clothing weather. I could just be in a pullover and jeans, and that's fine, or like a hoodie and shorts.
This is true.
It's a lot of versatility to it.
Yeah.
The leaves changing, it's really nice. It's like perfect weather. It's just like 55, 60 degrees, perfect weather.
Spring's not far off from that either, though.
Yeah, but spring is like a sloppy mess.
It rains a lot.
It's like unpredictable, yeah. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, 50 degrees in the springtime is cold.
Yes.
And 50 degrees in the fall time is like a little bit warmer for some reason.
Yeah, and you would think coming out of the winter, you would think that 50 degrees when it was cold is still...
But I view it like ocean water, right? It takes a while for the ocean water to heat up. That's like a 50 degree, it takes longer.
It's still a cold wind kind of that you're dealing with.
Maybe, I don't know.
I think that's got to be what it is. And that's the biggest thing in all of it, too. If we were in San Diego, I mean, it doesn't matter what time of year it is.
Oh, yeah.
Or we're in sandals, or the Bahamas.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter at all. However,
we have seasons.
That's one of the draws of the Northeast. Mm-hmm. Outside of winter kind of dominates everything.
Winter, but with all the global warming and stuff, though, winter has been...
It's still a pain in the ass.
It's a pain in the ass, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like it wasn't as much. It was more of a pain in the ass when we were kids, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but then it wasn't really affecting us. I was just having snow days.
And you didn't have to shovel growing up as a kid?
No, I did.
Yeah.
That's what made me into the man that I am standing before you, sitting before you. Episode 39, Change My Mind podcast. Wesley Sykes. Across the table from me is the cousin-it to my Uncle Fester, Nick Fryer.
You know what? I don't hate that one.
It's not bad, right?
I think I'm going to take
Addams
that one.
Family in theaters now.
That's right.
And of course, we know him as our resident guy in the chair.
Yes.
But to many others, I mean, this is a man of many titles.
Yes.
Tim Weisberg, paranormal researcher, will be picking his brain. That's an untapped resource, as we said last week.
For sure.
Actually.
Oh, whoops! I haven't. Wow.
Normally I don't take offense when you don't turn my microphone on because I'm just the video producer. But today I'm supposed to be the guest, man.
You are. You're right. I
He's the
don't know why
talent.
I thought you were on the third mic. And look at that. We got 3 screens going right now, too. This is wild.
This is a regular menage a trois in the studio here, so I'm very excited. There's legs and arms everywhere.
I've told you guys before that you could have guests.
Yes, you know.
It's just you didn't have to settle
but
for
no
me.
one really likes us, though.
We will have another guest next week, too.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yep. So we'll have the 3 cameras, and Tim will get bumped out of one of them.
Oh, that's fine by me.
So,
rocking the spooky South Coast shirt, though, too, tonight, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's a beautiful thing. Looks very nice there. And typically, we've said before in this podcast, we're not big horror movie fans. No. We're not big on being scared and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But this, I think, is a nice happy medium. As we're coming around to Halloween, All Hallows Eve, we have the paranormal extraordinaire, Tim Weisberg, in here to talk all things ghosts, ghouls, aliens, big feet, big foot, big thigh. What?
Feet.
Is it big feet?
Bigfoot.
Bigfoots.
Bigfoots. That sounds
So
better.
the paranormal community does not abide by the English language rules.
No, they make their own rules. I like that. I like that a lot. So we'll discuss all specifically as it pertains to some local ghost stories, hauntings, places, that sort of thing.
There were a couple of things that Tim's talked to me about in the past that I wanted to hear more about that I think will interest people. I know you got like the Bermuda Bridgewater Triangle is always one, but
I love that.
There are a few things that he has some. I think in general people would find it interesting. Tim's got some wild stories, and I really hope I don't go home scared again tonight.
Yeah, and we talk about people we'd like to have a drink with, our drinking buddies all the time. I think, Tim up against anyone, Tim wins that argument 9 times out of 10.
I think so.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's got a ton of
good stories there.
So that is the thing I miss most about going to cover Patriots games is driving with Tim and hearing his stories.
And you get something new every time.
Oh, yeah. But speaking of something new, we got the news and notes section.
Yeah.
And you informed me this the other day when we were out in Boston.
Yeah, so this is, we're leading off our news and notes segment with the same movie that we did last week, just different, we're just shifting out parts here pretty much. So we have Paul Dano in, Jonah Hill out of Matt Reeves' The Batman movie.
Not upset about it at all.
So Jonah Hill no longer attached to this movie, although I'd seen various places that it was confirmed or unconfirmed whether he was going to be involved or if it was just rumors. Because he was attached to the Penguin and maybe even the Riddler. I think it was closer to the Penguin.
Made more sense. He probably didn't like that. Probably didn't like the idea that he had to be the guy who's like always been known as the fat guy with a big nose.
Have you ever heard him in a podcast before, or like heard him speak?
I mean,
Jonah Hill.
Movies, no.
Just like the actual actor, not like him playing a character. He has a very California bro, like, oh man, that's tight, dude, and he talks like with a whole lot of slang and everything. It's very weird. It's very off-putting, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And he really resented what you just said, as being a fat Jewish guy. He felt like he was typecast very early on in his career. And he worked hard to shed that label. And the weight.
Yeah, I give him credit for shedding the weight. That's fine.
He's like kind of ripped now.
It's just weird to me. His head just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's like Dave Chappelle sort of thing. That was like tough to get used to.
But the
Paul Dano
is
who was not ripped.
I just didn't recognize him right away.
Yeah.
But once you said Prisoners, oh man, this guy's a good actor.
Yeah, Prisoners, There Will Be Blood, 12 Years a Slave. The guy can act his pants off.
Yes,
He's
sir.
in as the Riddler. Really powerhouse actor. I love that. For someone who,
He'll be a good
my
Riddler.
only real introduction to the Riddler is Jim Carrey's spandex-laden performance.
You never saw him in Batman the Animated Series?
Yeah,
You don't
yes
remember
and no, but I think that's like when I think of the Riddler and Batman, I think, unfortunately, of Jim Carrey.
No, but that's understandable. I mean, he's become less and less of a significant character through the years just because the way Batman has changed and he takes on bigger enemies as opposed to being the detective. But now that he's going to be more detective-y, going back to his roots in this, it makes sense to have the Riddler. But.
Right, yeah, and this role, kind of unlike Robert Pattinson, it took me some time to picture Robert Pattinson kind of come around to the idea as Batman. Paul Dano, right off the bat, the Riddler, done. Looks the part, fits the part. It just feels like it's such a slam dunk.
Yes, very good casting on this.
Yeah.
And that we've seen that's huge in the MCU, and it's going to make a difference here too.
Absolutely. So joining Paul Dano is Robert Pattinson, as we mentioned, as Batman or Bruce Wayne, whatever you like. Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, and Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle and/or Batwoman.
Tim,
Catwoman.
what is Riddler's actual name? I'm drawing a blank on it right now.
Edward Enigma.
Enigma.
Yes. Enigma.
Yeah,
Yes.
Enigma. Yeah.
Yes. Can he play?
Or Enigma still works too.
Yeah.
Do we think Paul Dano can play? He can play the Riddler, but can he play?
Yeah.
good
What's his Edward Enigma?
Yeah, I think anybody can. I think with the villains, their
Why is he taking this seriously right now?
their real life version is no, but that's like one of the great things about Batman Returns was you got the sympathy for Danny DeVito's Penguin. You saw his backstory. So, and I think that's been something that's been a hallmark of the Batman villains is you kind of know their backstory. I mean, people felt bad for Bane.
Joker. Yep.
So you need some of that aspect of it. You can't just be a straight out bad guy through the whole movie.
Unless you're Joker. That's the only one who's ever been able to get away with it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to incorporate Joker's backstory into a Batman movie. I think they did in the '89 Batman, but I don't think I would want that. And
Right.
you know,
I'm saying he's the one guy you can get away with that with.
I really don't. I don't want backstories anymore either. Stop it.
Yeah.
Every movie.
Yeah.
No, we get it. That's what the books are for.
Exactly. If it's but some of us don't read the book.
Well, but I get the Cliff Notes stuff.
Yeah,
I get the
this is true.
highlights.
You get the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
Anyway, and if you're going to see those kind of movies, generally speaking, you already have an idea, like you said.
Right.
Cliff Notes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
Silicon Valley season 6 trailer came out. That new season, the final season of Silicon Valley, starts this weekend, October 27th at 10 p.m. on HBO. Yes, I do. I've seen every episode.
Really?
Yeah, very funny.
And you watch it, Tim?
I do.
Okay. I've never watched an episode of it in my life.
Have you heard of it? You're giving me a
of
perplexed look. Yeah.
I just didn't. I thought you had said you watched it, and I couldn't remember for sure if you had or not.
Oh no, I'm a big fan. So the only problem is it's like the same storyline now. Even from this trailer that came out for season 6, it's like, the gang screws up and they have to write the internet and kind of face their flaws, all while possibly getting $1 billion offer for someone to buy their company. But they may be a little bit shady, and they spend the whole season trying to figure it out. And then ultimately they say, you know what, we're going to invest in ourselves. and that's pretty much how it goes. But it's like, I love the group. The whole cast is great.
Even without T.J. Miller?
Yeah, T.J. Miller.
He was pretty ancillary anyway.
Yeah, but I thought he was kind of like a big heat check type of guy. Like, he'd come in and just like really take over a scene right away. And then it kind of softened up a little later as the seasons progressed.
You had just more Guilfoyle. His loss means more Guilfoyle, which is perfect.
And who's the Asian guy?
Oh,
the Asian roommate
Wang.
I really love too.
Is it Wang or
I forget, but that's good. Yeah, Gavin Belson, I really enjoy like him, like getting more of him.
Guys,
now.
I hate to interrupt. Are we seeing a new trailer for Star Wars right now happening in front of us?
Oh, probably, yeah.
Because that's definitely Star Wars, and I don't.
Probably halftime at the Monday Night Football game. So
and that's
doing
not,
something.
That's not footage I've ever seen before. I don't know if you want to see it right now, Wes.
Yeah,
in the course of it.
See it right now. I mean, what are we supposed to do?
I don't know, but
I turned the camera to it, but that's copyright violation.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to make sure you see it. It's we saw a little bit of Kylo. We saw a throne that they're trying to sit at. C-3PO does not have his red eyes. He's talking to Rey about something, lecturing her.
Oh yeah.
Typical C-3PO. And looks like we have.
There's some
I don't know.
Some stormtroopers getting shot. There was a touching moment between Princess Leia and Rey.
Our play-by-play skills are not that bad, I will say.
Yeah, I got the. Oh, you kind of have that moment there with
Lando and Chewie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that Lando?
That was Lando. Yes.
Oh, I thought that was Finn.
That was right before that was Finn. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, two separate things.
Whoa.
What was that?
You get Kylo Ren and
Rey.
Rey.
Are they teaming up there? What is going on? Wow.
I'm assuming that was Snoke she was standing over. I thought he was supposed to be.
I don't know. Okay, were we going to get more of Rey with the red double lightsaber? Because I'd like that, please.
Maybe that was just a dream sequence, that first one.
That could be.
Oh, God, I would hate that if they Sopranos the Star Wars trailer.
Oh,
it was all a dream.
So
well, that was breaking news in the news segment. I don't think we could have worked that up any better.
That worked out well.
That was fantastic.
Yes.
Very excited for The Rise of Skywalker. Also excited, moderately excited for Silicon Valley Season 6.
not as excited as for Star Wars after saying that.
No.
It's like
two
Star
different things.
Star Wars, Silicon Valley.
No. Another show that apparently
awesome.
premiered last night on Sunday was Watchmen on HBO. Did not catch this.
Didn't catch it either. Did you?
Didn't-
Tim?
I
even know that it
recorded
was
it.
out.
I haven't watched it yet.
I think I will go back and watch
So
it.
yeah, when I go get through with this tonight, I'll be going back and watching that. IMDb gave the first episode a 5.9 out of 10, while Rotten Tomatoes has it certified fresh at 93%.
I don't trust that 93%.
Yeah, I know. I feel you on that. I'm just throwing it out there so people can take it how they will.
I'm not questioning you. I'm questioning them.
Right.
You're right to share it, but I obviously trust IMDb.
Yeah, I'm just spotty. Yeah, I'm just spotty on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Daily Beast called it a quote spectacular assault on white supremacy. So there's that.
Okay, didn't see
The
that.
Atlantic said it was timely,
Okay.
while Vox called it the show of the year, for better or for worse.
What does that?
I don't know what that means.
What the hell does that mean?
So-
just say nothing right there.
Part of that is just because it's the new HBO show.
Right.
So they all want to have to look like they're ahead of the curve and say
it's
how awesome it
Watchmen and it's
is.
Damon Lindelof.
Right.
So it's there's a lot of weight that's kind of carried with
But
this
most
show.
HBO shows are not huge hits after the first episode.
Right.
I don't remember there being huge buzz about Westworld after the first episode, or even Game of Thrones.
Right.
So I think some of this is kind of like, well, let's just take a chance and say it's
Let's see
awesome
what's
right
on there.
now.
Right.
Because we can always say it fell off
Yeah.
after the first couple episodes if we want to do that.
Very true. Here's my other thing with this. When I see that, and this is why one of the reasons why Rotten Tomatoes sucks. When I go and look at a movie, when I look at reviews, if you're going to be really critical and in depth, and you're going to give me a rating, I want you to take into account like the quality of everything, not just the timeliness of it. Yes, that's important, but I think when I see the 93% and then below it your note of spectacular assault on white supremacy, I mean this show would probably have been a 78 if it wasn't for that. I'm willing to bet that.
Yeah,
This
I
episode.
didn't really I kind of stayed away from spoilers and everything because I kind of wanted to consume the show. I know it's a little off-brand for me. I was trying a little something different.
Of all the things that you do, of the Watchmen show.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I just wanted to consume it with a fresh and open mind. You know,
Cool.
this is married Wes coming through as turning over a new leaf now.
That's
as
what it is.
In my married life. I think that was. How many times can I use that? Actually, that was a pretty good excuse.
For me, you can use it as often
So what
as
he
you
means
want.
to say is his wife didn't want any spoilers.
Yes,
And she was
right.
afraid he would
No,
say
she's
something.
not watching this show. There's no way. It's too heavy
But
for her.
it's an HBO show.
No, she doesn't like shows that make you think a lot. She just kind of wants like mindless, numbing TV, just to kind of like shut off.
Wow. Like, so keeping up with the Kardashians.
Yeah, exactly. Or like The Office for like the 800th time.
Or Parks and Rec,
Right, exactly.
which is outstanding.
So I think that just about does it, unless there was any other news that you wanted to bring up.
Just for the comic book minute, so
Yeah.
a little bit of news here. Geeks Worldwide, which you guys know, by now I review comics for them. We have not. I've written some reviews of Marvel comics in the past, but we were not like an official reviewer for them. We are now, so we'll be having stuff coming out Wednesday. We'll be sharing all that with you guys, and that'll help me with the comic book minute, so I'll
Right.
know every time what's going out each week, because sometimes Marvel's a pain in the ass about that. But DC doesn't share things publicly all the time, always either. So yeah, so that's a bit of news, and that's pretty big for the site.
Congratulations, GWW.
Yes, that's pretty awesome. So I'm excited to be catching up on some more Marvel things that I might have not normally read before because I didn't want to spend the money.
Now, listen, I got love for Geeks Worldwide. Hard to call yourself Geeks Worldwide when you're cutting out half of the comic book world.
I don't think it was a decision of not wanting to do it.
I'm
yeah.
just-
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
no, it's fine.
just a joke, yeah.
Still
was-
funny.
Yeah, a little play on words.
That's
there.
pretty good, crusty, right?
Was that Krusty? Is that what
No,
you
it
were
wasn't a
going
good
for?
Krusty.
I don't know. It
It
sounded
was
like
just
Krusty.
a
Nick, if-
surprising bit of offense there that you took.
Me? Oh no, I wasn't. No, I'm
You
not.
took that a little. It seemed like you took that a little harder than.
No, it didn't mean anything by
Yeah,
it.
it really crushed me. I'm really like
But
broken
if
up
there's
about it
one
now.
thing that I've learned about you, Nick, in these, 6 months or so that we've done the podcast, is that impressions aren't really your thing. I love you, but I'm not sure if impressions are your
God,
thing.
no, I'm
Yeah.
terrible at it. It's terrible at
Right.
it. No, I'm awful.
That's next week's episode.
When I did it, when I laughed, it sounded like Krusty in my head, but I was like, nah.
I mean, I can see how you get there, but it wasn't. Yeah, I think it was a half
Oh,
cocked.
terrible. I can do a weird, my own rendition of the Joker laugh, and I can
Right.
do a halfway decent Batman. That's about it.
About Bane, can you just complete the Batman family?
I'd have to practice that.
Well,
before.
maybe you drop it. Maybe you pepper it in.
If I do anything, it'd be that you think the darkness is your ally, and I don't want to get that wrong. Yeah, I can't. I think the line.
I was born in the darkness.
Raised by it.
You have to
Yeah, I
your
can't.
think darkness is your ally.
It was a big turning point in my life when I finally realized that I can't do impressions and just accepted the fact
I
that
still
I can't.
try.
do
I
it.
can
still do Batman though. Where's Rachel?
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
See, I
I thought it was
always
better than.
I always like to do impressions, and I like to think that I can. But the only time I ever really shine is doing impressions of people that I know.
Right. Yeah.
So it doesn't translate.
right. Unless you're with those people.
I'll do dead-on impressions of people that I actually know, but then I'll try and do it for somebody else, and I have no idea who you're talking about.
I don't know who this guy is.
Brendan's an easy guy to do impressions of. Well.
I think I've done that impression a few
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Well, you'll get to see that in action next week on our Candy episode.
Yes, looking forward to that very much. We also got drinking. When you said you're bad at impressions, like, wait, what's he talking about? So true, though. I suck at them.
I mean that with the utmost respect. Yeah, behind it.
Oh, I appreciate that. I don't deserve that. But anyways, drinking buddies.
Right.
Yes. So we got 2 old dudes for this one. Both of them got to have good stories, but Wes raised a good point when we were talking about this beforehand. I'll let you weigh in on that.
It's a tough choice. I still haven't decided.
This is a tough one. I don't know if Tim has seen Have you seen Who I Have for the Pairing
No.
yet? Okay. J. Jonah Jameson, obviously of Spider-Man and Marvel fame, and James Gordon, Jim Gordon, Detective Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, whatever, from Batman and DC Comics lore. Do you know off the top who you'd want? Because he does.
Am I getting the J.K. Simmons?
Yeah,
J.
I would.
Jonah
That's
Jameson?
how I'm imagining.
Yeah, it's
J.
fine.
Jonah
Then no
Jameson.
question. That's who I'm going with.
You're going with him.
Sure.
See, I think he's kind of a scumbag, though.
That's okay.
I'm
Very
not sure. I'm not sure if he's
tabloidy.
paying the bill for you.
He's definitely not.
Neither is Jim Gordon. He's on a police commissioner's salary.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think I'd be more willing to split the bill with Jim Gordon than J. Jonah Jameson.
He might pay for you, Jim Gordon. He's a good dude.
He's respectable.
Right, but I would feel bad taking his money. He's a public servant.
That's fair.
He's a high-ranking public servant.
We're a bunch of high rollers here too, Tim. So
Well, I'm assuming that if I'm in the world of Gotham, I can have whatever,
yes, yes, I understand.
profession that I wish to have.
Oh,
okay.
what would that be?
I would probably be Max Schreck from Batman Returns. I'd be the slightly evil department store owner,
Okay, well, there you
played
go.
by Christopher Walken.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't that Christopher Walken?
Because why not? What else am I gonna do?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, am I gonna be? What am I gonna be? The guy that was supposed to be Robin? No, thanks.
That's a guy who I could never do as Christopher Walken. I couldn't do an impression of him.
No,
I wouldn't
No,
even
no.
try. That one.
I used to do one. I don't know if it's any good anymore.
I used to be able to do one too. There's a good line from Joe Dirt where he's like talking to a fire extinguisher. He's like, no, you're talking to my guy all wrong here. You say that to him one more time, I'm gonna stab you in the face with a soldering iron. You know?
He was great in that movie.
But that he said, whoa, you're talking to my guy all wrong here.
That's perfect.
But anyway, it's not an impression. I can just like repeat the line.
It's a funny line.
But, you
yeah.
know. I think
you were
I'm
not
going
trying
with
to
James Gordon.
You were not trying to do the impression there, were you?
No, whatever. If it was, it comes out the same if I was trying or
Fair
not.
enough.
It
But
doesn't
you're
matter.
going with James.
Yeah, going with James Gordon. Blue collar guy, respect the police. Maybe I'd buy him a drink. I'd feel more comfortable buying him a drink than J. Jonah Jameson.
They're gonna take advantage of you.
I feel like J. Jonah Jameson, kind of a prick.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
I'm not sure if I just want to hang around that.
Yeah,
hear like all those smug stories and just assume that he's full of shit all the time.
There are definitely gonna be stories I'm not gonna buy with him.
Right.
I don't know how many Gordon is gonna tell me, but if you can get a few out of him, it'll be worth your time. He's a good dude, and I just, you talk about paying and stuff like that. This is the one instance where maybe neither of them are gonna pay for you,
Right.
but Jameson will take advantage of it too.
Better
Worse than
friend to
anybody.
have, though. How about that? The police commissioner or the publisher of a major tabloid.
Oh wow.
That's a tough one.
That is a tough one. That's
Now,
a really good
again,
question.
if we're going off of what we would be doing, and if I was a high-profile celebrity type, high-ranking person in Gotham, I may want the tabloid publisher in my back pocket.
You may want that. I think there's a very good chance you want that.
But it's just a regular blue-collar guy getting a get-out-of-jail-free card from Jim Gordon. That's pretty good.
If you're a blue collar and you grew up in Gotham, you're probably troubled.
Right.
I would say that's yeah.
But is Jim Gordon of unimpeachable integrity?
Oh, because if he was, then he wouldn't be giving you the get-out-of-jail-free
Right.
card.
That's true.
Well, it's not like I'm going to go out and commit murder. It's like maybe
Yeah,
I
it's
got
like-
stopped with having a few too many drinks or something like that. You know what I mean? Or
The
texting while driving.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I remember watching the Batman Begins and thinking that Jim Gordon was going to be corrupt.
Really?
Just because it was Gary Oldman. Like, I usually
He's a
expect
great actor.
I expect the worst from Gary Oldman,
Right.
usually.
I can never tell Gary Oldman. I feel like he just puts on one of the Mission Impossible masks every time. Like I can never tell it's
he's
him.
amazing like that.
He's
Him
outstanding.
and Daniel Day-Lewis
Yeah.
are both amazing
Yeah.
in that way.
Because he's Sirius Black, and then he was...
He was Sirius Black. Oh wow, I didn't even know that. See?
Yeah.
Again.
Gary Oldman is Sirius Black. wild.
Yeah.
So
Isn't
wild.
he the villain on Air Force One? Gary Oldman?
Might be.
Might have been. I don't remember. He was a villain in a lot of 90s movies.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'm trying to pull it up right now. Air Force.
Yeah, that's...
It's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Was Gary Oldman also in like the remake of the Planet of the Apes?
Could have been.
Is he?
I think so. I think he was in the last one.
I didn't know that one either. The last one with
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, or
I'm just drawing a blank.
Mark Wahlberg one?
no,
Harrison.
no.
Yeah,
No.
Gary Oldman, Air Force One.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Make it 2 for 2. Give me Planet of the Apes on here.
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah,
So you're talking the new Planet of the Apes, not the Tim Burton
newest,
one.
the last one
The
of the newest series,
okay. Have they been?
War of the Planet.
None of them
the
have
Apes?
actually been Planet of the Apes yet, though, right?
He is in it.
It's-
Yes, Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I'm
Dawn.
looking at right now. But you went 3 for 3.
That's it.
Look
Give
at
it to me, baby.
you. Well played.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week. We'll be right back. No,
Right now, Gary Oldman's changing the locks on his doors.
yeah, that's right. I believe you also had a ham and cheese sandwich for lunch today.
I think it's time. Oh, sorry.
No, I think you took the words,
Yep.
please.
I think it's time for us to finally hear a little bit about what Tim does with all his paranormal investigating and research and everything. And I know I don't like the idea of us doing this at night because you know how he tells a story and it will scare the crap out of me.
Well, and if we're going to be talking about the Bridgewater Triangle, I believe we brought this up on the program before. You have to drive home through parts of it, I believe.
Do I? I go to Fall River.
We're all in the Bridgewater Triangle right now.
Are we?
At least by the way I define it. Some of the definitions of the Bridgewater Triangle are a little different than mine.
Okay.
Some of them have it being a much tighter triangle and a little bit further north of here, but no, this whole area is part of the triangle, and it just keeps expanding. It's alive. It's breathing.
What?
It grows. The more that we pay attention to it, the more it reaches out its tentacles. So,
Can it
I love that.
shrink too, or no?
well, I think we're past that point where it could. Nick's problem is, but there's theories as to how we can solve the Bridgewater Triangle, which we can get into.
Yeah, I think I have one of them.
What Nick's referring to is when I told him the story of the red-headed hitchhiker.
Oh, that's
of
what
Route
it was.
44.
Yes. Yeah.
And now he can forever not go down Route 44 to the Seekonk Rehoboth line. So.
Appreciate you reminding me of that story.
Oh, I'm going to tell that story again because I saw some of the things you guys want to talk about, and I'm going to make sure I work that in.
Oh, nice. So, for those who may not know,
Freaking awful.
like I said,
this is a
he's
terrible
not
idea.
he is not just our resident guy in the chair, which he is fantastic at. Tim is the creator and host and executive producer of Spooky South Coast, the fantastic T-shirt he's wearing. He's worked on. Now, I took this off a website, so correct me if I'm wrong here on any of these. You've worked on various TV shows: Haunted Towns, Ghost Adventures.
No, I appeared on Ghost Adventures.
Okay. Yeah, in some capacity.
Okay.
You've been on Ghost Adventures, Most Terrifying Places in America, Monster Quest, My Ghost Story.
The lowest rated episode ever of Monster Quest, I'll have you know.
Oh, thank you very
I'm
much.
very proud of that fact. Well, it's because it was a show about monsters, and I was on the one episode they did on ghosts.
Okay,
So
so
the
yeah, it
people
doesn't
who,
exactly
the people
fall
who
in
are fans of
profile.
it, they were like, "Man, we don't care about ghosts."
That's
so.
super niche. Jeez.
But yeah, but if you think if you're just into paranormal stuff, that would still leave you hooked. But anyway.
There's some crossover. At that time when that episode aired, there was not crossover.
Okay.
So
Not so much there. Conversations with a Serial Killer. Sounds great.
yeah,
Ghost
that was
Asylums?
strange.
Ghost Stalkers. Mm-hmm. He's even authored the book Ghost of the South Coast.
I did.
Ghost.
Thanks for being here today.
Yeah.
Thanks guys for having me.
Yeah.
It's not like I had to let you guys in.
Right,
or anything.
exactly.
Conversation with a serial killer. I
So
never...
this is a show that was on in the UK.
Oh.
And it was we got contacted. This is I think 2007 or 8 or 9 or something. You'll like this story. We got contacted
Which means
by
I
this.
won't. I'll be terrified.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, it's not.
Oh, okay,
Not the
good.
ghost part of it.
I'm scared.
So we got contacted by this production company. They said we're doing this new show, and the show is about it's a British woman presenter and an American male medium, and the two of them are going on the trail of serial killers and trying to communicate with their spirits.
Oh.
Okay.
Sounds
Well, we
like
want you
such a
to be
bad
in the
idea.
episode about the Boston Strangler. And I said, all right, that sounds fine. So, we got the whole spooky crew involved, and our friends Jeff Belanger and Chris Balzano, we got them involved. Like, a whole bunch of us were going to be in this episode. And actually, you hear people talking about these things called ghost boxes or Frank's boxes or spirit boxes. This was the first time anybody had ever used one of those on TV, because Matt Costa had just made one for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, what are we going to bring on this show? I don't know. Bring that thing. We'll try it out. And they fell in love with it. Like, we were supposed to just use it for a few minutes, and they used it for the whole segment.
What is it?
It's a broken radio. And what it does is, you know how when you hit the seek button on your car radio, it just keeps going until it gets a strong signal, then it stops? That's because it has something called a mute pin. And what these radios do is they remove the mute pin so that it just keeps sweeping. And it doesn't stop sweeping through the radio waves. And the idea is that spirits grab the words that they want to use out of the radio broadcast to communicate.
Oh.
It was invented by a guy named Frank Sumption, who thinks that we're all crazy for using them to talk to ghosts. He thinks that that's the most ridiculous thing he's ever heard of, because he built them to talk to aliens. And
Right, of course.
the aliens would tell him that they saw him as their beautiful purple princess, and they would talk about the size of his breasts and all that kind of stuff. But anyway,
Oh, wow.
so
How were his breasts?
well, they were
Supple?
non-existent
Ample?
That was
as
the
a
first
male.
word I thought
but,
of. Supple.
voluptuous was the word that the aliens used.
Oh, wow.
So the aliens have a good
Vast vocabulary
Yeah.
on the aliens there. Good. Nice
So-
grasp of the English language.
Unbelievable.
But anyway, we tried this thing out and we used it and everything. But the funny part of the story that I think Nick will like is the only place that we could get to that had a tie to the Boston Strangler was one of the apartments. I don't remember if it's where one of his victims lived or where he killed one of his victims. But either way, it was now a BU, like, kind of like a dorm.
Oh, get out.
Like upperclassman housing. And it's, right by Fenway.
Oh, no kidding.
So we go
I
to...
probably park near it then all the time.
Well, we go to film this damn thing right at the same time that there's a Red Sox game.
Oh.
And so we're going, there's a falafel place across the street. So we're all running across the street to get some food because we're starving. And, you thought if you're doing a TV production, they'd bring some catering, but they didn't.
No.
So we're all of us are running back and forth from the house to the falafel place to get our food, and then to go back and film, and then go wait to see if our food's ready. And the sound guy, who was from England, he goes to come back from the falafel place over to the apartment, and he gets hit by an SUV.
What?
This SUV just nails him as he's trying to cross the street, and he's okay. We pick him up, and he's all right. We dust him off. Guy gets out of the thing, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And the guy's like, "Oh, very sorry. I was crossing the street here." He goes, "Get out of the goddamn road! I'm trying to get to the Sox game."
It's so on brand.
And I was like, "Sorry, but that's what every masshole driver is like."
Yeah. Trying to get to the Sox game, yes.
Speaking of massholes,
Yeah.
I want to hear about your Big Brother Triangle questions.
Well, yes, before we do that, I think
Bridgewater.
we'll get into some local things later.
Okay.
Let's talk generics before we get into specifics here, right?
Okay.
So what do you say to... Well, how long have you been doing paranormal research?
Well, we started the show in 2006. We started doing research for it, putting it together in 2005, but we went on the air in 2006, and we weren't going to be paranormal investigators. Matt Costa and I were just going to sit in here and talk to investigators and learn from them. And we brought in our friend Matt Moniz. He was a guy that we knew, but we didn't really know that he had done this stuff. And he volunteered to help us out. And once we brought him in, he made us go out and investigate. So I think I started doing my first investigations, I want to say maybe April of 2006.
Now,
So-
did you believe in ghosts before this?
I did. I'd had
Before that.
experiences as a kid, and I knew that there was something to it, but I needed to have proof to know for sure.
Okay.
Makes
So
sense.
that was kind of what I was looking for. And now I've had it proved to me, 1,000 times over. So now I see my job as helping other people, have the experience to prove it to themselves.
Okay, so that's perfect. So if someone doesn't believe in ghosts, come up to you and say, "Convince me otherwise," you would say,
I can't.
"Yeah."
That's your own decision to make. That's your own journey to make. What I can do is I can try to put you in the best situation possible for you to have an experience. It's up to you if you want to believe that experience. There's been many people that I've investigated right alongside that we've had profound paranormal experiences, and they've walked away saying, I'm still not convinced. I'm still not sure we weren't just thinking that it was more than it was. And you really can't. I used to think when I started doing this that I was going to be the one person that would find the one piece of evidence that would prove to the world that ghosts are real. And I realized that it's it's not only is it not going to happen, but it's not my job to do that. Like it's
the individual.
Right. It's more about just doing good research and making sure that people who want to come along for the ride can do it in a way where they can appreciate the process and appreciate what it is that we do. I can never convince everybody that what I do is legitimate, that there's real ghosts out there to find. But what I can convince them of is that the pursuit that I'm taking to do it is legitimate. You know, that's where I try to be an advocate to say, listen, we're not just a bunch of weirdos running around in the dark wasting our time.
Now, is there any way to be more receptive to making contact with paranormal?
Oh, you could
beings?
kill yourself.
That's a good.
I mean,
that's
one way. I wouldn't recommend it.
No, can you spell that out for me?
Did you say that again?
Yeah, let me write this down real quick.
Did I hear him correctly?
Well, you could become a ghost.
Okay.
That's the best way. No, so the best way, in my
Walk
opinion,
a mile in their shoes.
Right. Yeah.
the only problem is it's irreversible. So
Right,
until we figure that part
little
out.
thing.
The one thing that I think is the most important thing is to you have to be open to the idea.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into it being closed-minded, and I'm not talking metaphysical, like if you walk in there with a closed mind, the spirits are going to know they're not going to interact with you. I'm not saying it like that. I'm saying if you go into it with a closed mind, you're not going to be willing to go down the path that maybe what's happening is paranormal.
So isn't there an argument to be made that all of this is kind of like a placebo effect?
There is, absolutely. And what's funny about it is I actually think the placebo effect idea is probably the more accurate definition of what a ghost is. And it's actually what I would prefer it to be. See, I don't think necessarily that ghosts are dead people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that ghosts could theoretically be something that we're creating with our own minds. And so what happens is when we go on these paranormal investigations, it's not a ghost that's manipulating our devices or growling at us audibly or scratching people. It's something that we're doing with our own minds because we're trying to basically create this ghost. And I would much rather think that that's what we're doing.
That'd be really cool if you could do that.
I always say in my lectures, this is the line that I use. That's some Jedi mind trick stuff there.
Yeah.
And I would much rather
use 5% of your brain or whatever it is. I mean,
Right.
I think it'd be conceivable. Yeah.
I would much rather think that I can stand right here and I can make that TV remote come to my hand without having to get up than to think that my dead grandmother watches me while I'm taking a shower.
Yes.
So I would much rather prefer.
It's a weird pull.
Right. Okay.
It usually gets a good laugh in the lectures.
So on that note, then, why are there ghosts? What's their purpose then?
In that regard, if we're looking at it from that definition, it's just something that we're doing with our minds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not. There is no real why. It's just a matter of what and figuring out how.
So when you I've heard of stories of ghosts that are haunting houses or whatever,
Unfinished business, or they've been murdered there,
or they're like
traumatic
pulling
events.
pranks even. So like in those instances where they're like, I don't know, a painting's upside down or something like that. I'm just using that as an example. How would that be an example of my mind doing something to play a trick on me? Do you know what I mean?
don't think that it has to explain that it being your mind has to explain all paranormal activity. I just like to think that would be what a majority of what it is that we experience.
Okay.
Is. Accidental activity that happens like that, usually, a lot of times it can be pointed to poltergeist activity. Which poltergeist activity, people make the assumption that it's a ghost, and usually poltergeist is usually being caused by a human being. Usually there's what they call the poltergeist agent, who is usually like a prepubescent girl, but there'll be a child normally that's having a problem with one of the adults in the house, and the activity will center around one of those adults. So the mother might be fighting with the prepubescent daughter all the time, and they're not getting along. And every time the mother is home alone, with the daughter, weird stuff happens, and the mother thinks that there's a ghost that's targeting her. But in actuality, it's telekinetic activity. It's psi activity that the daughter is unaware that she's doing. But some of us, there are something to be said for what they call intelligent spirits, that there are actual ghosts out there that you can interact with, and it's just energy. It's just energy that's being recorded. The second law of thermodynamics is that energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be changed. So the energy that makes us up, when we die, it doesn't die. it goes off and forms bonds with other energies. But for some reason, sometimes it will retain who we are and retain that essence of us. And usually, especially around this area, people will say, oh, I think I have a haunted house. The first question I'm going to ask them is, well, what's your basement like? Like, what do you mean? Like, what's the foundation of your home? Is it fieldstone if it's an older house? Is it granite if it's a newer house? Chances are it's one of those two living in New England. So both of those are rich in quartz. Quartz is piezoelectric, which means it records and amplifies energy, which it's something that's called the stone tape theory. So all the energy that's being expended in that house is being recorded within its foundation, within its walls. And the quartz that's in there, the same way we use quartz in computers and wristwatches and everything, it's just recording that energy. And then there's certain environmental factors that allow us to go in there and have a playback of it.
Oh my God, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when people are freaked out by this stuff, I'm like, well, just give it a chance, because if you really get into the nuts and bolts of why we think that it's happening,
that makes sense.
It's not scary.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's just this wild stuff that we just haven't figured out yet.
Now, so when you were kind of talking about the poltergeist and that kind of kinetic energy kind of playing off one another, is that a reason why people say children are more receptive to paranormal activity?
Partially, I think it's more because children don't have the filter that adults have. What happens is we're all born kind of able to perceive this stuff. And what happens is we get freaked out by it because we're trying to go to bed and we're seeing the shadow figure at the foot of the bed, and it freaks us out. We scream and we cry for mom or dad, and they come in and tell you there's no such thing as ghosts. And if they keep telling you that enough, eventually your mind is just going to take over and say, well, it can't be real what I'm seeing, so there's another explanation for it, so just ignore it and go to bed. And the more that you train yourself to believe that it's not real, the further away you get from being able to perceive it naturally. So I know lots of people who are raising their kids and they won't tell them that ghosts aren't real. They'll tell them it's real, it's perfectly natural, they're not here to bother you, they're just passing through. It's no different than, if you were sleeping next to a window and people were walking outside, just ignore them. And so those kids, you find that as they get older, they have less problems perceiving the paranormal.
And they're more receptive.
They're more receptive, and they're more... I don't want to say psychic about it, but a lot of people who are mediums, that's what it is they have this. I think everybody has the ability to communicate with ghosts or whatever ghosts may be, but we get that block built up that if you can remove that block, or if you have such a powerful connection to it, that block can't be built up, that wall can't be built up high enough, then you can keep utilizing that again and again. And like I always say, I'm psychic as a brick. But now I've had to change that and say I'm psychic as a sponge, because I've realized that as I go to more and more of these places, I can feel when there's something around. I would never say that I could sit there and talk to a spirit, communicate, and visualize them in my head and all that stuff. But I can just walk into a place and say, oh yeah, no, there's definitely something here. I think something's going to happen tonight. Because the same way like a mechanic can smell what's coming out of the back end of a car and tell you what's wrong with it.
Right.
You get that sixth sense about it,
so
for lack of a better term.
When you talk about, like, where I'm a little confused with how you mentioned before how they are manifestations of something that we bring.
Some of them are.
So some of them are manifestations of what we bring, and then you think that the other things are, the other spirits are our energy that never leaves our body once we pass away. That's what you think the two are, and then there's the poltergeist thing, which is
right.
Kind of more along the lines of the first thing.
Right. So it's all energy no matter what.
Okay.
It's just some of it is energy that we are manipulating.
Have you tried to figure out how people can manipulate the energy? Because that would be something pretty outstanding.
So in the 1970s, there was a group called the Toronto Society for Psychical Research, and they did this experiment that they called the Philip experiment. And what they did is they got a cross-section of society. They got like a housewife, a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor. They put them all into a room, and they said, we're going to create a character that never existed. And they named him Philip, and he was a 15th century English nobleman, and he was in love with a woman he couldn't have, and he killed himself and all this stuff. They created this whole backstory for this character that never existed. And then they conducted a series of seances in which they communicated with Philip. And they were actually getting verified answers to the questions they were asking based on the history that they
How were they using like a Ouija board or
Ouija board? They used automatic writing, dowsing rods, all these different. The technology was a little bit different in the 70s for what we used for ghost hunting then, but they used all the tools that they had available to them and communicated with this spirit. So some of it could be, was it their subconscious, like manipulating the Ouija board? Was it their subconscious manipulating the automatic? Was it all this stuff, them wanting to communicate with this thing that they had concocted?
Yeah.
Or was it more the fact that everybody focusing their consciousness on the creation of this had gone there and created it? There have been a number of mass consciousness experiments supposedly that have worked. So, like, usually what will happen is, like, there'll be a natural disaster. A hurricane coming toward Bermuda. And then you'll have somebody that will lead a mass consciousness experiment. You'll get 10,000 people that'll all focus on trying to move that hurricane. Next thing you know, the weather report says, well, it looks like the hurricane's veering off to the east. So is it coincidence, or is it the fact that they actually did focus enough to be able to manipulate it?
That's really interesting. So do you believe in Ouija boards?
I do, only because
I think those are kind of like crocks of shit.
I thought the same for a long time. It was when I used it with a blind woman, and I knew I wasn't moving it. So, and she couldn't see, so it's not her moving it, but we're getting stuff that's spelled out. It was at Edaville, and we were talking to the founder of Edaville, Ellis Atwood, through the Ouija board, and he was giving us all kinds of answers. And I, like I said, I know she couldn't do it, and I know I wasn't consciously moving it. So that led me to believe that either that energy that's out there can manipulate that, or it's some sort of subconscious thing that I can't be cognizantly aware of, but it's still happening, which I don't think is disappointing, because that's just
still kind of cool.
It's the same thing that I'm talking about with being able to manipulate these other things.
Why does that game work?
Why does it work?
Yeah, like, what is the secret behind it?
I don't think there's a...
It's just a magnifying glass on a board.
It's not even a magnifying glass. It's just a...
Well, whatever.
It's just a little sliding piece of wood. So these have been around for a long time. Talking boards have been around for forever, for thousands of years. The Ouija board itself only came about during the Spiritualist era. I think it was 1893 or 2 that those really came out and became a big-time thing. But they weren't... First of all, they were never evil until The Exorcist came out.
Okay.
Before that, almost every house would have a Ouija board in it, especially during Victorian times, because when a man and a woman, or a young man and a young woman were dating, they weren't allowed to hold hands. They weren't allowed to sit next to each other on the couch. They weren't allowed to touch at all, and it was improper. But if you brought out the Ouija board, then the two of you sat around this small table. Your hands would be on top of each other, on top of the planchette. Your knees would be touching underneath the table. And it was kind of like a way to get a little bit, frisky and have it be accepted by society.
The Ouija ghost is a good wingman for you.
Yeah.
Help people
It
get
was,
laid.
it was like it was paranormal Tinder. So I always say that, like, the Ouija board, was a staple for every household because of that. And like most people that grew up in the 50s and 60s, it's like, oh yeah, we had one of those in our closet. We played with it sometimes. And then The Exorcist comes out. The Exorcist mentions a Ouija board as being how Captain Howdy comes through to Reagan, and next thing you know, Ouija boards are the tool of the devil.
Are there ghosts in the WBSM studio?
There are.
God, because I just had a moment where I looked into the newsroom, I saw the headphones that are hanging there. I'm like, are those eyes? And it's just this kind of stuff, man, really messes with my head.
So the ghosts that we have here, we have a couple, because we've had some people who have passed away here that worked here. So we think some of them are hanging around, which is a good thing. But there's another entity here. The old kitchen that we used to have, we had cabinets on the wall on the side where the sink is now. And I would walk to the bathroom. I'd be here alone. The cabinets would be closed. And I would come out of the bathroom and all the cabinets would be open. And then
Love it.
This room behind us, the light is out right now in the dubbing studio, but it has a motion sensor light. Just so happens right now the bulb's burnt out. But I would sit here on Saturday nights when I was alone, or sometimes, Stephanie will be here with me. We'll be here late talking after the show, and she'll see it. We'll watch as this black figure will walk by the glass of the studio door, and then walk into the dubbing studio, and the motion sensor light will come on, but there'll be nobody in there.
God.
Oh man, that freaks me. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we know we're in the presence of ghosts?
So there's
why did I ask this question, man? It's so stupid.
there's some ways to detect it.
Sleep with the lights on
But
tonight.
basically, we have to make a lot of leaps in logic.
So is it like the temperature gets cold, you get goosebumps,
right?
hair
And
on your neck?
there's a reason for that, and it's kind of a pseudoscientific explanation for all of it. So again, we have to kind of assume that we know what a ghost is, and that a ghost is some sort of manipulation of energy. So if that's the case, then what happens is when a ghost is manifesting, you have what's called an endothermic reaction. So it's drawing in the energy of the atmosphere to be able to manifest. It doesn't have enough energy to make itself visible or to knock over this camera or to make a sound or whatever. So it draws in the energy of the atmosphere. So as it draws in that energy, it's drawing in that heat energy, which creates a cold spot.
Mm-hmm.
And as that energy is being drawn in and being consolidated into one area, it causes the electromagnetic field to spike. So you're getting the cold spot that's being drawn in. That's going to give you goosebumps. You're getting the electromagnetic field going up around you. That's going to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. That's going to give you a creepy feeling. It's going to make you feel like you're being touched or apprehensive or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then the ghost will manifest. It will do whatever it does. Then you'll have what's called the endothermic is where it's bringing it in. Exothermic is where it releases that energy. And then you'll feel the temperature go back to normal. The EMF will drop down. So what we do is when we're trying to determine if there is a spirit present, we have... people say, what's the best piece of ghost hunting equipment that you have? None of it. None of it actually detects ghosts. It's all stuff that's used for other purposes that we're applying to this theory.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have thermometers that will measure the atmospheric temperature. We will have EMF detectors that will measure the electromagnetic field. So we're looking for these fluctuations and manipulations combined with other experiences to say we think that that's a spirit manifesting.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I like that a lot.
It does. Doesn't mean I like hearing it though.
Are there any other generic questions you want to get out of the way for you?
Yes, there were. I don't even know if I want to ask that friggin' urban legends questions anymore. Because
you know what urban legend I'm going to tell.
You're gonna tell the same one that I already know.
I think it's probably the best urban legend of our area.
It's a really good one. Yeah, I mean, I've never forgotten it, so you can tell it. It's still gonna give me. I'm still gonna have a tough time driving home.
Is this the redheaded hitchhiker? Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you guys both know it, I mean,
good. We don't have to talk about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, is there a place for you that's just too terrifying to visit?
Off limits.
In terms of paranormal activity, no. In terms of safety for myself, there's probably places that I wouldn't want to go.
Really?
Yeah.
Safety as far as
physical safety.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the places that we go to are deteriorated.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are dangerous. They don't want us to go into a lot of these places. Urban exploring is a big thing right now, and there's a big crossover of the urban explorers and the paranormal researchers. And anybody that breaks into a place for paranormal research, like, get the hell out of the field because you're just going to give everybody else a bad name.
Yeah.
There used to be a school in Rhode Island called the Ladd School, and don't worry, it's torn down now.
No, I think you told me about this.
But the Ladd School was an abandoned school, and people would break in there both for urban exploring and for paranormal research because it was severely haunted. And some kids broke in, like 16, 17-year-old kids. They broke in one night to try to go ghost hunting. And one of the kids actually spilled some acid from a classroom on his pants.
Oh, my God.
And basically burned his junk off.
Oh, my God.
And so he's tried to sue the state of Rhode Island for having this chemical laying around. And so the lawsuit ended up getting thrown out. But it wasn't a slam dunk that the lawsuit was going to get tossed out. So it's things like that that will give people that do what I do a bad name. That's why we always make sure that we get permission. There's a cemetery a few miles from here in Mattapoisett called the Ellis Bowl Cemetery. It's on Wolf Island Road in Mattapoisett.
I know exactly what you're talking about, actually.
And you'll see it all over the internet in that Only in Your State website. Like they love to talk about this most haunted road in Massachusetts. And the urban legend of that is that there was a Mustang full of kids in the 60s or 70s that was driving down that road and slammed into a tree. And they all died. And that if you drive down that road And if you stop in front of the cemetery by the tree,
Oh, goddamn.
and just leave your car there and turn your car off, you'll see headlights coming up behind you, and the car won't slow down. It looks like it's going to hit you, and then right at the last minute it disappears.
Now, so I've driven down that road. I had a friend from high school who lived right around that, and I know the Wolf Island, like, she lived a left off of that road or something. You drive right by the cemetery there. And she would always told me, like, you hold your breath every time you go by there.
Some people think you're supposed to hold your breath when you go by a cemetery anyway.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what's funny about that is that. But hold on, because that urban legend. First of all, there's no truth to that we can find. There's no story of there actually being a car full of kids that rammed into that tree. But there is a tree there that if you're going too fast and not paying attention, you will ram into. So this is a case where a lot of times what these urban legends come from is that they're actually, they're parables that have a lesson that tell us, like, okay, that story exists so that kids will be too scared to speed down that road and slam into that tree. So they do have a place, and not every one of them has to be something that comes from truth.
Now, why are places like old hospitals or quote-unquote insane asylums or cemetery, why are certain places more paranormal hotbeds than others?
Because of the energy that's expended in them. We talked about the stone tape theory earlier. A lot of those places have those right factors to record and amplify that energy, but also the energy that's expended in those places is so great. It's what's called the psychological imprint. If you've ever walked into a room after two people have been arguing, and nobody's saying anything, but you can feel the tension in the air, that's a psychological imprint. And normally that will go away after a few minutes, but some of these places, those imprints are so strong, they stick around forever. So you're going to have places that are basically stained by the things that have happened inside of them. And what's funny is, hospitals, people associate hospitals with death, and they think that there's going to be a lot of death and terrible moments that have happened in them. But there's also been a lot of positive things. There's been births. There's been people who have been healed, people who have, maybe undergone miraculous healings. So there's a lot of good energy that can be in a lot of these buildings, too. The problem is, I think the negative is the low-hanging fruit.
Always with everything.
Yeah.
So the negative, and it's just easy, and it appeals to our baser nature. We're savage by nature. We're not enlightened beings.
And the blame and shame media of 2018, 2019, just can't go.
Yeah.
Top happy spot.
Yeah.
So the idea is that when you go to a place, you're usually looking for the worst possible thing that's happened there than the best thing. And so that's kind of what just feeds into people as they go through.
Sure. Okay. All right. Nick, any last licks here?
Nah, I think we should go to the specific sites that we wanted to ask him about.
The Lizzie Borden house, Fall River. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have to be very familiar with it, right? I'm sure you've done some work with the Fall River house.
Probably about 24 investigations there over the years.
Okay. What makes this so memorable, historical?
Well, I mean, do we need to give people a breakdown of the Lizzie Borden story?
Well, I think just putting it out there, she allegedly murdered her father and her stepmother with an axe, if I'm not mistaken.
Somebody did it.
Yeah.
And most likely
she was acquitted.
Not definitely proven.
Yeah. That's the thing. Fall River's, forever. I remember in Fall River Dreams reading, it was, who wrote that book?
It was Bill Reynolds.
Yeah. So Bill Reynolds wrote that book, and it was about Chris Herron and all that stuff. And forever, Fall River was most known for her, and then it became him. But it's like, that's...
And now Jazel Correa is going to overshadow...
Oh, my God. That's a great point. Yeah, jeez.
But the idea with the Lizzie Borden murders, she was the only person that was ever brought to trial for it. She was acquitted, I think, after a 13-day trial. The idea of there being hauntings there, I think part of it might go to what I was talking about how we create our own ghosts.
Right, because people have said they've heard Abby and Andrew Borden.
Yes.
Some people claim to hear Lizzie, but did she die in the house?
She did not. I have captured her voice, and what we believe is her voice in the house. We actually have an EVP that our friend Luann Jolly of Whaling City Ghost captured with us, where we're just talking in a room and you hear a female voice in the background say, "But I'm a good daughter," with like a Victorian accent to it.
It's really creepy.
I'll play you some of these later, Nick, if you want.
No.
I can play you when it called me.
There's a reason he's
it
asking
called me
more
an
questions.
asshole. It told me to go F myself.
Really?
Yeah. But anyway, so the idea is First of all, the Borden murders weren't the only murders that happened on that property.
Oh, okay.
They weren't the first. And originally, we'll talk about this like with the Bridgewater Triangle, but originally that area was all part of the Freetown State Forest.
Right.
And the Native Americans would not go to that area, which is funny because you would think right by the river, that would be a prime hunting area, or fishing, whatever. The natives would not venture into that area because they felt like it was dark and it was cursed, and then they couldn't go into that area.
Fall River was.
Yes. Which explains a lot. Yeah.
We'll try.
Make it here. That's the new...
Yeah, right, exactly.
A lot of people don't realize this either, but Fall River actually had a different name for a while. It went by the name of Troy for a long time, and then they went back to Fall River. Yeah,
Troy would have been so much cooler.
That's why, like, you'll hear people say like Troy City this, Troy City that. That's why, because Fall River was Troy for a while. But anyway, so the Borden case, there was another house on the property that was next door to the house. So if you see the Borden house now, there's a building next door that is a barber shop and an apartment building. There used to be a house there, and that was owned by one of Andrew Borden's relatives. And years before, probably about 10 years, I think, I'm not sure the exact date, but before the Borden murders, she went crazy, and she killed 2 of her 3 children by drowning them in a cistern, and then went up into the top floor of her house and slit her throat.
Oh my God!
Sounds like the Shutter Island.
So the spirits of those kids are said to haunt the Borden house. There was a man after the Borden murders happened. For a brief time, it was a boarding house. And the Second Street house was a boarding house. And there's a story about how there was a guy running from the police, and he ran into the basement to try to hide from the police. And the police went down there and they shot him in the basement of the house.
He also is haunting.
That supposedly he might be there. So there's other spirits associated with it. But after the Borden murders, for a long time, the house was owned by the McGinn family. Mm-hmm. And the McGinns actually left the house to their granddaughter, Martha. Martha's the one who opened it as a bed and breakfast. So before that, in 1996, it had been a private residence, and the McGinns never reported anything paranormal happening there. But when it opens up as a bed and breakfast and everybody's coming in and talking about the murders and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden the place becomes haunted. So, and I'm not saying it's not haunted. I've had plenty of stuff go on there that I know
just because they've
activity.
reported that, though, what does that mean?
I'm just saying it doesn't mean that it wasn't there,
right?
And that just didn't bother them or that they didn't notice it. But I'm just saying that there's the possibility that a lot of because you walk into a place and you say, wow, if any place would be haunted, it would be this place. Mm-hmm. And if enough people go in there and think that, it's going to become haunted.
Right.
Would you stay there for the night, Wes?
Yeah, I would.
Oh.
Yeah. Not by myself. Maybe,
I've been there,
a couple people.
I've never slept there, but I've been alone in the house by myself.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so what's funny is, man, we were filming something there, and it was just there was 4 or 5 of us, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And when we go there, we would get the run of the place, and we would lock the doors, and nobody else is around. And so we're in the basement filming something, and we heard what sounded like footsteps going across the kitchen floor. And all we're thinking is, oh my God, somebody came in the house, we're going to get in trouble. So we go running upstairs, and there's nobody there. And then that same night, we were recording a podcast in the dining room, and as we were recording the podcast, we heard a woman singing on the 2nd floor. Mm-hmm. You go up there's nobody up there, but then you'll hear a baby crying on the 3rd floor. There's like all these different sounds and different activity that will happen. I think I'll tell this story because it's pretty funny. We went there because
that's exactly what I think.
No, this is funny.
It's hilarious.
Gotta
crap myself.
The owner of the house, Leanne, or the operator, she will call us whenever there's anything really bad going on. She's used to it, but sometimes it gets overwhelming, and she will call us. So she'd had a lot going on, so she had us come and check it out, and we didn't really find anything out of the ordinary. The regular general activity we get from there. And at the end of the night, she would have us lock the door, because she would be up in the barn. There's an apartment and an office over the gift shop where whoever's the caretaker for the night will stay. And so she was up there, and she was going to bed, so she left us with the key, and the procedure is we lock the door, then we put the key in the mail slot, and she has her own key to open up the door. So we lock the door, put it in the mail slot, we're walking to the car, she pops out in the window in the barn and says, how'd it go? We're talking to her. She's like, hey, you left the 3rd floor bathroom light on. I was like, no, I didn't, because I go through that house and make sure all the lights are off, And I know that I was turned it off because I'm terrified of the dark, or at least I used to be.
Get
so
out.
I was scared of the dark for a long time.
Oh, that is
the irony. It's
So-
rich.
Yeah.
It's rich.
I was like, there's no way I left that light on. So she's like, well, I'm going to turn it off. She comes down, she opens the door, goes up to the 3rd floor, turns off the bathroom light, comes down, locks the door. As soon as she locks the door, 2nd floor bedroom light comes on.
Oh.
So then she opens up the door, goes in there, turns off the 2nd floor bedroom light, 3rd floor bedroom light comes on. And this goes on for a couple of minutes. And finally, after a little while, no lights come on. We're standing out in the parking lot talking to her, probably a good 10, 15 minutes. None of the other lights come on. We figure it's okay to leave. She goes up to go to bed, and we get in the car to leave. You know where the Lizzie Borden house is? We get to Whites of Westport, so we're about 5 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
My phone starts ringing at like 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, what? Who's calling me? And I look, and it's Leanne. And I pick up the phone, and I'm thinking maybe we left something behind or something. And hello? And all she says is, what the F did you do to my house? What do you mean? She's like, I'm sitting here looking out the window watching as every single light in the house is flashing on and off.
Oh, my God.
Oh my God.
So...
Oh, that's
Oh,
not
that's great.
funny. It's not a funny
It is funny.
story. I'm
That's
so
a very
mad.
funny story.
Oh my God, that's terrible. Why would anybody why would she want to do that? Why would she want to put herself in? Oh my God, man.
Not only does she own that one, they bought the other house that Lizzie Borden lived in after the murders.
Dude, how do you do this when you were afraid of the dark before? That blows my mind. What are you afraid of when it comes to the dark?
So I had a problem when I was a kid that's called night visitor syndrome, where I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would think somebody was in the house.
Okay.
And, there's a lot to be said for that
That's a
happening
thing?
with
It's like a syndrome?
Yeah, well, it happens a lot.
Might
It's
have that.
associated a lot of times with sleep paralysis,
Oh.
which is a legitimate scientific phenomenon.
Oh, it's a thing. I've
But-
had that before. That's friggin' terrifying.
But sleep paralysis doesn't go on for, a half an hour, 45 minutes, and that's what I would be experiencing. I would just have this overwhelming sense that somebody was in the house. And it would go on. And Moniz thinks that it's because I was abducted by aliens or something as a kid. There was a few weird things that happened to me when I was a kid. I won't go into them now, but
Okay.
there's the possibility, in his eyes that that's what that was. I just think that it's just something that freaked me out.
Maybe.
So the dark freaked me out, and I didn't like being in the dark. And it was doing paranormal research that actually
Helped you
changed my
overcome
mind
it.
about that. Now you can stick me in a basement of a house alone, and I still get a little bit freaked out and apprehensive about it, but I don't run.
Gotcha.
So let's switch locations. Staying in Massachusetts, the Bridgewater Triangle, the aforementioned Bridgewater Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my understanding, it was, as you mentioned, parcel of land that was already considered to be cursed by natives anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a Native American curse that was put on the area after a specific Wampum belt was taken and not returned during the King Philip's War.
There's a lot of theories about how the Bridgewater Triangle came to be. My theory is that it's always been that there's just what John Keel, who was a researcher of all things weird, he called these window areas.
Mm-hmm.
And he's actually the guy that wrote the Mothman prophecies, if you're familiar with that movie.
Sure.
Or anything. So he called them window areas, and I think the Bridgewater Triangle is one of those window areas. So it's always had this stuff happening. The Native Americans knew it. The Native Americans knew that the Freetown State Forest and the Hockomock Swamp, that these were places that were like the power cells for this negative area, so they didn't go in those places. But what happened was the term Bridgewater Triangle originally was coined in the late 1970s by Lauren Coleman, who is a very noted cryptozoologist. He runs the International Cryptozoology Museum in Maine. A lot of Bigfoot reports, a lot of Dover. He investigated the Dover Demon. But what happened was he coined that term in his research and then wrote about it in his 1983 book, Mysterious America. At the time, the Bermuda Triangle was very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So he thought Bridgewater Triangle sounded good. And he made the vertices East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, and Bridgewater proper. He said those were the 3 points of the triangle. What happened is over the years...
I was going to say, now I'm reading a 17-town, 200-square-mile area in southeastern Massachusetts.
That's kind of the more modern definition. Aaron Cadieux and Manny Familari put out a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Great documentary. You can catch it on Amazon Prime. But that was kind of the definition that people were using at that time, where it had expanded out. Now, I mean, my definition is you have to take the triangle all the way into Rhode Island. It goes all the way up to southern New Hampshire. It's this big area where there's a lot of concentrated reports. Not just ghosts, not just UFOs, not just Bigfoot, not just puckwudgies. There's all kinds of different stories and different types of phenomena that happen in a concentrated area. But the Bridgewater Triangle goes beyond just paranormal stuff, too. This area also has a lot of cult activity. It also has a lot of...
Still? Or I know in the past it did.
The cult's still around. Just the people that got in trouble and got arrested were the low levels of the cult that were too stupid to stay out of plain sight. But there's higher... I've been warned about talking about the cult, and I won't talk about it usually on the radio. Because
can you say the name of it?
It doesn't have a name.
It's just the cult.
Yeah, but the cult that exists around this area, there are people who are in power, higher ups, important people who are part of this cult.
Listen up, cult people. I'm cool. Just please.
Yeah, it's all cool, right?
We're not looking into any of it. Seriously.
To go to the wampum belt point, one of the theories about the origin of the Bridgewater Triangle is that it came about from King Philip's War, which was a war between the colonists and the Wampanoags. Basically, what happened was, everybody knows Massasoit, the story of Massasoit, the great sachem of the Wampanoags, and how he helped the Pilgrims. Well, when he died, his son Wamsutta took over, who the English called Alexander. And when he took over, something happened where he died. The colonists claim that he caught the flu and died. He was in colonial custody because they had arrested him for something. And they say that he caught the flu and died. His brother, Metacomet, or King Philip, because that's the English name for him was Philip, he thought that his brother was poisoned. So he was wondering about, should I go to war with the colonists here? Should we retaliate? And what ended up happening is he was in Plymouth and he looked up in the sky and he saw a full lunar eclipse. And he took that as a sign. And then they ended up discovering the body of John Sassamon, who is one of the praying Indians, who were these natives that were converted to Christianity. His body was found under the ice at Assawamsett Pond in Lakeville. And this confluence of events basically kicked off King Philip's War. And it was the bloodiest war per capita ever fought on American soil. More of the population died in that war than in the Civil War. And this whole area was one big battlefield. So when people say their houses were built on a Native American burial ground, the whole area was. So the idea was, at the end of the war, they captured King Philip, they killed him, they cut his head off, and they stuck it on a pike in Plymouth Center, and it stayed there for 20 years. But and I think there was some talk about they sent his hands back to England. But also, when they captured Anawan at Anawan Rock, which is on Route 44 in Rehoboth, when they captured Anawan, who was his last surviving general, Anawan had it in his possession.
Is that Profile Rock?
No, it's a different rock.
Okay.
Anawan Rock is just where this battle happened, and people still report phantom fires and native drums and everything out there. But they captured Anawan, and he had in his possession the wampum belt. Now, people hear the term wampum, and they think that that's Indian money, but it's not. Wampum was the beads, and it was the beads that they used to tell their story. So the wampum belt was the history of the Wampanoag people told through the beadwork. And so when the English captured Anawan, they took the wampum belt. Nobody knows what happened to it after that. There's some theories that it got sent to England and that it might have been in the private collection of somebody, or it might have been sent to a museum, or it's sitting in this, some back corner somewhere. The most prevailing theory is that it actually got broken up and divided amongst the colonial army. So either way, this wampum belt disappeared. And people think that the Bridgewater Triangle is a curse from the Wampanoags that will only be lifted when the Wampanoag people get their wampum belt back.
So at this Profile Rock that I mentioned, this is where I was looking on Wikipedia, my source of all things information. It says this is the supposed site of where Wampanoag historical figure Anawan received the lost wampum belt from King Philip. And legend has it that the ghost of the man can be seen sitting on the rocks with his legs crossed and his arms outstretched, like waiting for it.
I don't know if that's historically true.
Yeah.
But Profile Rock was an important spot to the Wampanoags. First of all, the reason why it's called Profile Rock is because they thought the profile of Massasoit was in the rock. It was a natural formation, but they thought that it looked like Massasoit. It's actually, the formal name of it was called Joshua's Mountain, just because the man who lived on the property, his name was Joshua, and so that was his mountain. But in the days of King Philip's War, they actually used that as a lookout spot because they could look across and see Mount Hope in Rhode Island, which is where King Philip sat on his throne. So they would relay smoke messages back and forth between the two. And Profile Rock had a very important part in the Native American lore. Now, over the last couple of, it happened a couple of months ago, the profile, the face is completely fallen off. So there is no more Profile Rock.
Really?
And so we're wondering.
It's like the Man of the Mountain in New Hampshire, right? Yeah.
So now we're thinking that maybe this might be stirring up some of this activity that's happening now.
Why, is there more activity that's happening as of recent?
Things have kind of kicked up, and basically, like one of the basic rules is if you live in a haunted house and you do construction, that's going to draw out the spirits because they don't like the change.
Right.
And so maybe the same thing's happening with Profile Rock, where now that the face has fallen, the spirits are kind of angry about that.
God, yeah.
Does Hockomock Swamp literally mean the place where spirits dwell?
Nobody's exactly sure of the translation. Also, Hockomock, some people said Hockomock is the Wampanoag word for devil. But nobody's really sure exactly what it means. Well, we do know that the Native Americans didn't go there.
Right. Okay.
And I'm interested to see what happens when they build the South Coast Rail with the electric route, because that's supposed to go right through the Hockomock Swamp. Like, people are going to be like commuting home from Boston and look out the window and like, oh, look, Bigfoot. Right.
Yeah. That'll uproot a whole lot of stuff. Okay. Solitude Stone. What does that mean to you?
I don't know much about that. I saw that in your notes. I'd never heard of it.
So from what I've read, or on Wikipedia again, it is an inscribed stone located in West Bridgewater, which was found near a missing person's body. It's also known as Suicide Stone. It was found with the inscription, all ye who in future days walk by Nunkatesset stream, love not him who hummed his lay, cheerful to the parting beam, but the beauty that he wooed. Now, I don't know.
That's a lot to inscribe on a rock.
Yeah, I don't know what that means at all. But so you're not familiar with it.
I'm not familiar with it. I'll have to look into it and see if I can find it. But there's a lot of stone sites around New England that have legends and reverence to them. We have America's Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire, which some people think was built in the 1950s. But we have a lot of rocks around here. There's Pulpit Rock in Bridgewater in War Memorial Park, where Reverend Keith gave his first sermon. That seems to have some sort of a power to it. And a lot of this kind of makes sense because those rocks have quartz in them, and that quartz is going to hold energy. And so it doesn't surprise me that these rock sites are said to have.
Okay, so that seems to be the big. Okay,
I mean, the most haunted rock site in all of the Bridgewater Triangle.
No,
the Assonet Ledge.
Oh no, what is that?
Have you ever been out there?
Mm-mm.
So if you go into the Freetown State Forest, there's a ledge, and it's about I think it's like 80 feet high or something like that. And the story, and it's Copacut Road. I'm sure you've probably been on Copacut Road in Fall River. If you drive into the Freetown State Forest, it takes you right to the ledge. And the legend is that there was a Native American princess who was in love with an English colonist, and her father, the chief, would not allow her to.
Is it Pocahontas?
It's not Pocahontas, but similar.
But
it's like the Disney version story, yeah.
Her father would not allow them to be together, so distraught, she threw herself from this ledge and killed herself.
Oh.
And now people will report seeing the Lady of the Ledge. They'll see this figure dressed all in white that will be seen roaming around the top of the ledge. What's interesting about this is there's been a lot of suicides up there. Obviously, it's a place people would jump from, but people who are of perfectly sound mind will say that when they're standing at the edge of the ledge,
they get thoughts. They'll
have this overwhelming feeling of jump, and I've been there myself and had it happen. I know plenty of people that have had it happen. What's funny is we told this story we did a presentation for the Freetown Historical Society, and we told that story there. And a guy stood up from the back of the room and said, that's a great story except for one problem. That actually was built in the early 1900s. That's a quarry that was dug out in the early 1900s. So there wouldn't have been a ledge there when there was Native Americans out there. It probably was more of a graded hill. And so I was like, well, that's, very interesting that you would say that, but still we get reports of people that have encountered this spirit. So did we create that ghost ourselves by telling the story over and over again? There's a movie called The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
Never heard of it.
So in that movie, John Wayne is a gunfighter who lives in this town. Jimmy Stewart plays a lawyer, from an East Coast tenderfoot who comes to this town to be the lawyer, and he runs afoul of the outlaw Liberty Valance. And what ends up happening is John Wayne kills Liberty Valance, but everybody in the town thinks that it was Jimmy Stewart that did it. So Jimmy Stewart is hailed as a hero for like 20 years. And so it gets to be like toward the end of his life, and he's telling a newspaper man the real story of what happened. And he's telling all about how, it was really John Wayne that did everything, and, I don't deserve any of this credit. And at the end of the discussion, the newspaper man gets up and he closes his notebook and he goes to leave. And Jimmy Stewart says, well, are you going to print the real story? And the newspaper editor turns around, looks at him and says, when the legend becomes fact, you print the legend. And so that's what I think happens with a lot of the stuff in paranormal. I call it the Liberty Valance effect.
Yeah.
The legend becomes fact. We print the legend. The legend overtakes the actual facts of the story, and the legend becomes real by enough people tell. There's a difference between paranormal investigation, where you're pulling out devices and trying to quantify and qualify what's going on, and what we call legend tripping, which is where you're just going out there and trying to have an experience, just trying to go out there and become and have something happen, and that makes you part of the story. You become part of the legend by doing that.
Screw the analytics.
Yeah, Manalytics is what it comes down to, right? One last thing before we get out of here. Can I give you 10 minutes to talk about the Amityville Horror House? Is that
You said horror house, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. If
He did not say whorehouse.
Oh, horror house. I see what you did there. Yeah.
So the Amityville case is one that I have been obsessed with my entire life. I saw the movie. Actually, I read the book as a young kid, probably way too early, and I saw the movie way too early. But I became obsessed with it because it's
real.
It's based on a true story.
Out of New York.
And the story goes. Well, first of all, there's a real murder that happened and is associated with it.
Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family on 112 Ocean Avenue, which was a large Dutch colonial house in Amityville, Long Island. He was convicted of a murder around a year later, 1975. In December of 75, the Lutz family moved in, and after 28 days of living there, left, claiming to have been terrorized by paranormal phenomena while living there.
So the Lutz family, it was George and Kathy, and Kathy's 3 children from her previous marriage, and their dog. And they all moved into that house. Now, if you've ever seen the house, like online, or seen like real photos of it, it's a nice house.
It's a nice house. Dutch colonial. It's a good house.
They got it for $80,000.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have had to pay such a low thing, but when something like that happens,
who else is going to buy the house?
Right.
Yeah.
So they were like, we don't care. Like, this is our dream house. We have to buy it. And then what's funny about this is in reading the story, like, I was a kid that moved around a lot. And so every time I moved into a house, I had to worry about, is there going to be something here?
Right.
Especially where I was getting stuck in the most creepiest rooms because I wanted to be like away from everybody else.
And you already had night paralysis.
Right. So, this,
Have you had sleep paralysis before?
No.
It's awful. It's
I wouldn't. It doesn't sound pleasant.
It's not.
Basically, it's just your mind waking up before your body does. Our bodies are paralyzed while we're sleeping.
And then you hallucinate. Right?
You're still kind of in the dream state. Yeah.
So you kind of hallucinate, and I've had it happen twice, maybe 3 times. I know I can remember 2 times it's happened. It's friggin' awful. Go ahead.
So I got obsessed with this case, and I read the book numerous times, watched the movie tons of times. And it, for some reason, it just resonated with me. Well, when we started doing Spooky South Coast, I had the opportunity to start interviewing people associated with the case. So I started off talking to Alexandra Holzer, who is the daughter of Hans Holzer, who was the first real American ghost hunter, and he was one of the people that investigated the Amityville house. So she would talk to me about her dad's work in that. And then Ryan Katzenbach, who made a documentary about the Amityville case. And then as I got deeper and deeper, I would talk to people more associated with it. Laura DiDidio, who was the newspaper reporter who covered the Amityville hauntings for the newspaper. I had the chance to interview her. And then I got to interview one of the Lutz children, Christopher Lutz, the youngest. And I actually become friends with him. And we've hung out at paranormal conferences and stuff. And he's a perfectly normal, great guy, except when he starts talking about this stuff, like it gets really weird.
How so?
It's almost like he becomes possessed by something.
Mm-hmm.
His brother Danny, I've talked to Danny, but he won't come on the show. I've never talked to the sister, Missy. Then the really weird part happened because there's a psychic named Jackie Barrett. And Jackie is a friend of my friend Chris Balzano, and so I became friends with Jackie through her. And Jackie is drawn to the darker stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother was a very powerful medium working in New Orleans. So Jackie has been drawn toward the negative things. And somehow or another, she got hooked up with Ronnie DeFeo in jail. Like, Ronnie DeFeo asked to speak to her, or she went to speak to whatever it was, but she became Ronnie's spiritual advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And she started telling Chris all about all this stuff. And Chris is like, there needs to be a book about this. And she's like, well, you write it. Bless you. And Chris said, no, I don't think that I want to write that. But my friend Tim would love to because he's obsessed with Amityville. And we used to, every time we would say Amityville in the studio, by the way, stuff would go wrong technically. So we think we've avoided that, but just be aware of that.
We've said it twice, 3 times now?
Yeah, it used to be, we would say, like, don't say the A word. But anyway, so Jackie would go and talk to Ronnie. And
I appreciate all the spirits leaving us alone. Thank you.
And I offered to write the book, and she said, well, I'll be in touch. And I never heard from her. And then it turns out she wrote it, and she said, I had to be the one. Once I started getting into the darker stuff with Ronnie, I couldn't let anybody else surround themselves with this because the darkness is going to overtake
Consume
them.
you, yeah.
So we had Jackie on the show to promote the book and to talk about it with us. And she's always a trip because she's like total New York. She swears and stuff when she's not supposed to. She's hilarious, but she's just awesome. And she says to me, I have a message for you from Ronnie. And like my heart stopped and like went up into my throat. I was like, Ronnie DeFeo, the Amityville murderer, he knows who I am? He has a message. She's like, oh yeah, he knows who you are. He knows all about you.
Oh boy.
And I was like, well, what's the message? She said, he wants you to stop looking into this because it knows that you are.
It knows that you are.
Whatever is there.
What is it?
Whatever is the darkness in that house. Whatever it is that Ronnie claims overtook him that night.
Yeah.
At first, he said that he didn't do it. But now he tries to say that there was something in that house that overtook him and caused him to do what he did. And it's that same thing as what supposedly took over George Lutz. And freaked him out. And I always thought it was weird how they lived there for 28 days. Oh, that's convenient. They lived there right up until the first mortgage payment was due.
Right. Yeah.
Because his business was hemorrhaging money by the time he moved in, and he was depressed and weird things were happening just in their family life in general. And so I always thought that it was kind of convenient. But the more that I've talked to Jackie and the more that I've looked into it from this, there are places that can do that to you. There are places that when you go to them,
The Shining sort of thing, or
not even, but it doesn't even have to be that.
Oh, there's a new movie around The Shining coming out too.
Yeah, the sequel. But it could be that you could just have a room in your house that when you sit in it you don't feel right. You could have every time you have to go to visit a relative. It could make you feel sick physically, and you don't know why. There are places that just have these effects on us, and it could be because the electromagnetic field is higher there, and that gives us physical illness. But there's just something darker about Amityville, and I've always wanted to go and investigate it. There's been a few times when I've been told that I was going to get a chance because it's been for sale a couple times. At one point, I looked into trying to buy it.
Right. Yep.
I had an investor, somebody that was willing to listen if we could come up with a solid business plan for it. And my plan was, let's turn it into a bed and breakfast, a la the Lizzie Borden house. And what I discovered is that they've changed the appearance of the house and the address so that people won't know where it is anymore, but everybody still knows.
Right.
But the neighbors...
Isn't it like an association, owned by an association?
Yeah, it's
now,
in a little neighborhood... it's not owned by the association, but they would buy it before they would let somebody else buy it.
Yeah.
That would try and do anything
profit
like what we
off
wanted
of it.
to do.
Yeah.
Plus, it's not zoned for it, and they won't give it the zoning.
Yeah.
So it turned into like a dead end thing, but I've always wanted to go and investigate there. And the last person that bought it, we were told it was a famous person associated with the paranormal that was planning to buy it and use it as a place to do research. And immediately, my first thought is Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures, because he's the only paranormal investigator that has that kind of money. Like, I know a lot of people in the paranormal world.
Right,
I know pretty much almost everybody. And I know what they make from television and all that kind of stuff. And the only one that has that kind of money is Zach, because of the deal that he has with the Travel Channel. And he goes out and he buys haunted properties. And so I thought it was him, found out that it was not him, so had no idea. I guess I can talk about this now because nothing's come of it. But the supposedly now who it was that bought it was Vincent Price's daughter. So the channels are open that we're supposed to maybe be able to get in there at some point. And even if I can't go in there and investigate, I just want to get in there and walk around.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like it's like somebody who's
during the daytime, I assume.
I don't care. It's like somebody who's a Civil War buff that gets to go and step foot on Gettysburg for the first time.
Yeah.
Like it's like all this stuff that I've done, it finally comes to life and becomes real. That's what I'm looking for.
Now, how much time passed from when you got that message from Jan? What was it?
Jackie?
Jackie. From Ronnie DeFeo to back off to when you picked it back up again? Like how much?
I think that probably happened, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. And I haven't really like delved back into Amityville that much since. So I don't think we've done an Amityville show since.
Okay.
Part of it is because there's not a lot of new stuff to talk about with it, but also part of it is like, maybe that's kind of run its course a little bit with us until something else happens. We will talk about it on the air, like if it's up for sale again.
Yeah.
But we don't dedicate whole episodes to it anymore.
Good idea.
Okay. Well, I think we dedicated enough of this episode to that here. So, Tim, we appreciate you taking the time out to enlighten us a little bit on the parallel universe, if you will.
This is
I
a
always
good
love
idea.
talking about it.
This is a good idea. For this time of year, man, this is what people like, getting their freaking shit scared out of them.
So, Nick, on a little bit of a lighter note, what's been on your mind recently?
Well, I went and saw Zombieland 2 thinking, we were going to review it. Totally had a brain fart in the course of all of it. But I very much enjoyed it. We're not going to end up reviewing it, right? Because we do it at the latest 2 weeks afterwards. Yeah. We got the candy episode next episode. I need that desperately after this. I need some candy. I need something light, man. We've done the Joker. Now this. I need something light. I need something fun. But anyways, I thought it was good. I thought it was a good comedy sequel. I know that's not always easy.
It's tough, yeah.
I'd probably give it something like it's a comedy, so I understand that when I give this grade, but probably like a 72 if I'm being objective. Okay. But like in terms of fun and everything, very much enjoyed myself.
I just want a good popcorn movie.
Yeah, in terms of all that, like it's right what you want it to be.
Okay,
absolutely 100%. And also preview for The Lighthouse. That movie looks messed up. Like
is that with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe?
Yeah, that looks. Ooh.
It's supposed to be a dark comedy. Like it's supposed to be a comedy.
Yeah, movie. I haven't seen anything about it yet.
I don't know where the comedy part comes from. It does not look comedic to me at all.
I think it's supposed to be like a dark comedy.
If it is, then that's amazing. I'm seeing drama thriller right here.
Okay, I could have misread that.
I don't think. Yeah, I think you might have misread it. It's supposed to be in New England. Yeah, too.
Is it super nerdy that I want to see that movie? That's Tesla versus Edison.
Oh no, I know that movie. I don't think it's nerdy though. I think that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's. I'm fascinated with that.
Didn't Tesla like steal everything?
No, Edison stole from Tesla.
Oh, okay, the other way around. All right.
Right.
What else has been on? Oops, sorry.
I was gonna say I have a Ouija board in my car that has Tesla on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna play with it after the show.
Yep.
I love it. Let's do it. Let's break it out.
You guys can do that. I'm leaving. What else has been on your mind, Wes?
Versus Boston. We went out there for a live podcast with a couple. I don't know if we call them friends or whatever, but a couple of our podcasting colleagues that were putting it on. Great concept. I loved it. It was the first time going to like a barcade style place.
Awesome place.
You could just sit at the bar and play FIFA with your buddy all day, or just sitting like up on like a 50-inch TV.
Or go and play the old school games too.
I was a little disappointed with the lack of old school games, but again, I thought it was be like a bigger arcade style thing. There was probably about like 10 games there.
Well, they had the 2-gun games that we played. Then they had Blitz. They had Street Fighter 2. I told Tim how you worked me on that one.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
100 hand slap.
they had. No, they definitely had more than 10 games, but I mean, it's like I'm splitting hairs.
You know what I mean?
Like
It's not
15
a lot.
max, yeah.
I was expecting it to be like a full-on arcade. You run around Dave and Buster's style.
That was my expectations, except the Xbox thing at the bar was...
Yeah, I mean, that blew it away.
I wasn't ready for that.
You could play Super Smash on there. You
Yep.
could play Madden. You could play Injustice or Marvel Capcom, like all that good stuff. So love that idea.
Outstanding.
Big fan of it.
Yes, great spot.
And next week, we'll be doing another Halloween adjacent themed.
So much lighter too. So much more kid friendly, and people who don't like getting freaking scared.
Let's talk this out right now. So we're gonna be doing like an auction style. I'm trying to remember the idea that we came up with here.
It was
we bring in a bag of candy, and we pull out each individual assorted piece, and then have like an auction for it.
I don't know if we would have the right assortment if we did that, though. I don't think there's any like ultimate assortment of candy.
Well, what if I just buy like 2 or 3?
Do they sell those
bags?
Do they sell those bulk candy places?
Because I think they'll have one
Ooh,
that's like
if we go to
Hershey's,
Billy Boy.
and another one that's like Mars. And if I bought those 2,
You're gonna buy the bags?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
have to buy
then you're not
Halloween
getting
candy
you're not
anyway.
getting the weird candy.
Trick-or-treaters?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't.
Oh, you're an apartment complex. I would think they would have them though. Still, I think the kids would just stay in the building. But
Maybe, I don't know. I gotta look into that now.
If you do that, though, you're not getting like the weird ones like the Bit-O honey
no.
and the Chinese fortune gum.
The Necco wafers, like the miniature ones.
I don't think they make those anymore. The Necco
that's
closed
gross.
down.
I mean, if we want to do that, that's what you want to do for the plan. I like that idea. I'm just trying to figure out how it is that we're supposed to, like, what's the next step? Because we talked about just ranking them.
Then we're
originally.
drafting our best Halloween candies, and then we vote on who has the best assortment of Halloween candy.
Is that what you were talking about when we did it last time? Because he liked your idea last time. I had a tough time wrapping my head around it. I can't remember it.
That sounds like it might work.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a week to figure it out.
Okay, so we'll probably do like 3 candies a piece or something like that, we think? Or
Yeah, 3 or 4.
4.
Yeah, depend.
But we can talk about all kinds of candies.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's just the natural course of it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. Either way, it's going to be candy. It's going to be fun, and it's not going to scare me. I'll hopefully not be sleep deprived by then.